A very good morning. Today is 11th August 2020. In this video, we'll be having some discussion of the editorial page of the Hindu newspaper. The first article is regarding the China and India, how the things should go, but isolating China as a proposition and the reality. The second article, which compares the Indian steel as the UPSC, the one who comes after civil services, and the main bricks of it. The structure of exam is focused in this article. The third article is on WHO's relevance is fading. The final article is on the safety measures, how the healthcare centers are lacking the safety. Before I begin, I welcome you all to Wifi Study Karo. This is also my Instagram page, Wifi Study Karo. If you want updates, you can also follow me in Instagram and also Facebook, the same name, Wifi Study Karo. I am Prashanth. Let's get started. The first article is regarding the isolating China as a proposition and the reality. So countries like India must note that despite its belligerence, China is far from being quarantined given its economic clout. So the latest rounds of talks, that is on August 2nd, between the military commanders of India and China did not produce any breakthrough, and the situation along the line of actual control in Ladakh sector thus remains essentially unchanged. So all that is evident that China has indicated a willingness to resile from occupying territory beyond 1960 claim line. A return to the status quo ante prior to May this year, it is nowhere in the sight. So meanwhile, a war of words between India and China has broken out. India's external affairs minister has promulgated that the state of the border and the future of our ties with China cannot be separated. That is the reality. So China's repose was to reiterate that their troops were on its side on the traditional customary boundary line, so that was followed. Thereafter by China wading into the criticizing what is essentially India's internal matter. For example, the changes affected to the states of Jammu and Kashmir in August last year. So China-US ties and rhetoric. In the meantime, relations between US and China continue to deteriorate. Talk of the new realignment of the forces taking place with the US and China leading different camps is very much in the air after years of cooperating with one another. In US and China are currently at the stage of confrontation, with both seeking allies to join their camps. So the rhetoric has begun to resemble the Cold War era, and both sides are even willing to display their military muscle. So this places several countries, especially in Asia, in a difficult position, as most of them are loath to take sides, especially with belligerent China as a neighbor. So the contrast between the US and China could hardly be greater. While the US may not necessarily be first choice for many countries of Asia and Asia Pacific region, in the case of China, it is clearly more feared than allowed. So no one in Asia, Pakistan is perhaps an exception, nurses any doubt about China's imperialistic ambitions or about Chinese President Xi Jinping's authoritarian worldview. So Beijing's virtual takeover of Hong Kong, paying a scant regard to the concept of one's country, two systems, has only confirmed that what had long been known about China's intention under Mr. Xi Jinping. Before this, the region had been a witness to China's rampant land grab in the South China Sea. So in 1970s, China grabbed control over the partial islands of Vietnam. So in 1990s, the occupied Mischief Reef in this partly islands and area of the South China Sea, as the Philippines had always considered its territory. So in 21st century, China had continued with some tactics of taking control over the territories belonging to the smaller neighbors. One which attracted international attention was Scarborough-Sohal confrontation in 2012. When Chinese marine surveillance ships came into direct confrontation with Philippines Navy. Progressive and expansionist in March-April this year, while the rest of the world was wrestling with COVID-19 pandemic, China further stepped up its aggressive actions, remaining almost 80 geographical features in the region of the index of Chinese sovereignty. Complaints galore also exist about China's expansionist attitude beyond the South China Sea. Taiwan, Japan, Vietnam, Indonesia and South Korea have all complained about China's menacing postures in their vicinity. So China's favorite approach is, it would seem, have been unilateralism rather than compromise when dealing with its smaller neighbors. Implicitly, also, it reflects an unwritten code of Belt and Road Initiative and the maritime Silk Road. So notwithstanding all, China is far from being quarantined. Hardly any country in Asia is willing to open confront with China and side with the US. Many countries, especially those in the East Asia, are unwilling to see taking sides at the juncture. The explanation for this being that China was always known to be overprotective in South China Sea, considering it a natural shield against the possible hostile intervention by outside forces inimical to it. So neither the presence of US aircraft carriers in the South China Sea, the presence of Chinese missile sites in the recently claimed areas of the wariness that most association of the South East Asia nations display, vice versa, that is China, has been enough to make countries in the region openly side with US and also against China. So meanwhile, China is determined to press home its advantage, so irrespective of international law or regional concerns. So in a strong group, while it is especially disconcerting is that despite a series of diktats from Washington to restrict the economic and other relations with China, the United Kingdom's decision to end reliance and the Chinese imports, call of its Huawei 5G product, and growing anti-China sentiments heard across Europe, all of which make for a good copy China remain unfazed. So China seems confident that its stranglehold on the global economy ensures that it does not face any real challenge. It would be wise for Indians to recognize this. So it is equally necessary to realize how fickle some of these countries can be when it comes to the economic issues. Australia is a primal example. So the latter is a member of Quad, that is the US, Japan, Australia and India, that is widely seen as an anti-China coalition. So nevertheless, at the recent meeting in Washington between the US Secretary of State Mitchell and the US Secretary of Defense Mark Esper, the Australian Foreign Minister and Australian Defense Minister, Australia made it clear that China is an important for Australia, that it would not do anything contrary to its interests, and was a strong economic engagement was an essential link in the Australia-China relationship. Likewise, the UK Secretary for the State for Foreign and Commonwealth Affairs, that is Dominic Raab, recently stated in its parliament that the UK wants a positive relation with China, would work with China, and that there is enormous scope of positive constructive engagement. So it is thus more than evident from a few nations across the world are willing to risk China ire because of the strong economic ties that have been forged over the years. So economic ties are proving way stronger than military and strategic ones, even in Asia, where the majority of Asian countries have grave concerns of the Chinese predatory tactics. The Asian having become one of the Chinese biggest trading partners, it adopts a default position, that is not to take sides. So India and its neighborhood at this time, when the dice should actually have been lodged against China, it is India that is finding many of its traditional friends being less than helpful. So while India's relation with Pakistan had now nowhere to go but downhill, India's present standoff with China had provided Pakistan with yet another opportunity to fish in troubled waters. So including the production of the fake map of Pakistan, which includes the part of India's territory such as Siachen, Jammu Kashmir and Gujarat. So India's relations with Nepal meanwhile have hit the roadblock, relations that have surged in the recent months, and the Nepal have gone to extend the publishing of new maps which show the Kalapani area as a part of Nepal. So in Sri Lanka, the return of Rajapaksa to the power after the recent election does not augur too well for the India-Sri Lanka relations. So it is, however, the strain in India-Bangladesh relation, notwithstanding the warm relation that exists between the Bangladesh Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina and Indian leaders. This is the real concern, since that it can provide a beachhead against the Chinese activities in the region. So Beijing moves ahead. China is meanwhile busy stirring the pot elsewhere in South Asia. In July, Chinese Foreign Minister Wang organized a virtual meeting of the foreign minister from Nepal, Afghanistan and Pakistan. Here he proposed taking forward an economic corridor plan with Nepal style by Trans-Himalayan Multidimensional Connectivity Network and expanding the Chinese-Pakistan Economic Corridor, that is CEPEC, to Afghanistan, touting benefits to new economic corridors on the lines of CEPEC. So China has also made headway in Iran to an extent. Again, it's an India's expanse. So Iran and China are reported to be currently pursuing an economic and security partnership that would involve massive Chinese investments in energy and other sectors in Iran in exchange for China receiving regular supplies of Iranian oil for the next 25 years. So China had also dexterously positioned itself in the circumvent India's monopoly over the Chabahar port by providing a munificent aid package for Chabahar Afghanistan rail link, thereby undercutting India's offer of the aid and assistance for the rail project. So geobalancing is not happening with China's disadvantage. So this is the lesson we must well understood when countries like India plan their future strategy. This is regarding India and China ties, how it had happened in the recent past and how it should go in the future. The next article is regarding the main bricks to use India's steel frame, that is the structure of examination. So compassion and honesty are what must guide successful entrance into the still fiercely competitive civil services. So when UPSC announces the results of the civil services mains examination every year and the list of successful candidates amidst all the fanfare, it is legitimate for all of us to reflect for a few fundamental questions. Are the right type men and women being inducted into high bureaucracy? Is there any mid-career review of their performance so that the misfits and the dishonest are weeded out? Both these questions are extremely relevant if we want to see an upgradation of the quality of service to the poor. So still a major draw, the UPSC has without doubt a strenuous protocol. The process is clinical and objective as possible. There is no reason to believe, unlike many of its state counterparts, the UPSC's honest organization, which allows no latitude to the few venal elements that may occasionally be inadvertently drawn into various stages of selection process. So evaluating civil service recruits for their intelligence and integrity is a difficult exercise if one takes into account that many attributes go into a fabric of credible and performing civil services. So also we are too diverse a nation with a huge population of rising expectations to construct a one-size-fits-all reform formula. So what is heartening is that several lakh of Indian youth take examination every year, but its popularity continues to grow despite that many hurdles, which include the preliminary weeding out tests, possibly because the challenges of the position in public service are still attractive and incentives in the form of salary allowances are enlarging. So the author is happy that there are many success stories in the children from the hitherto neglected sections of society making the grade. So although this despite cynicism with which many citizens now view a public servant high and low, the competition is intense and spectacular. Over about 900 candidates, that is less than 4% of those who appear for preliminary examination ultimately get appointed. So the change now, when my generation made a bid for a selection of 1960s, we were just around 15,000 20,000 candidates in the race for the same number of openings. So there was no preliminary examination, which now clearly eliminates the majority of applicants. So the current stiff process of the selection induces many of us in the age group believes that most of us would not have passed muster under the present scheme of examination. So in UPSC list released a few days ago, 304 candidates were from general category, 78 from economically backward and other backward classes 251, scheduled caste 129, scheduled tribes 67 constituted the rest of the group of the successful candidates. So women among them were about 150, one of them bagging the third rank among all the appointees. Undoubtedly, this phenomena had brought about the new attitude of and drive to achieve, which were not fully visible earlier. So as usual, there were a number of engineers who had made the grade. 2 candidates from Tamil Nadu were visually challenged. Nothing can touch us more. Success stories of disadvantaged members of society such as these candidates should help to dilute the age-old prejudice against those who were challenged. So the enormous care taken by the successive government to make our higher civil service reflect social diversity is commendable. This is as it should be in a country where, despite all the gory happening of violence in the same regions, there is a desire to push forward to empower the poor and the weaker grounds. However, we can rest content with the incremental progress that we have achieved towards transforming the image of civil services. Not at all. My reservation is mainly on account of two major charges leveled against higher civil services, especially the Indian administration and Indian police service, wherever we go within the country. These are to do with the glaring insensitivity to the poor citizens and greed that still afflicts a segment of civil services. So the district collector and district superintendent of police are the two powerful and visible symbols of the administration. There are around 739 districts in India and as many as collectors and SPs, although the penchant of many state governments to create more small districts escalates administrative expenses. Tiny districts make officials more easily available to the common man in distress, who looks up at the official dome for the assistance almost on a daily basis. If the collector and SP are inaccessible, as in the case in the most of our districts, it shows that whole administration is in a bad light. So there are a few young officers who are different from the majority of the and put their heart and soul into the task of alleviating the miseries of the poor. So it is this band of officers who should somehow be enlarged, and quickly. The sheer workload of collector and SPs may prevent them from finding them interact with every citizen, but this reality does not convince the citizen, who feels queerly aggravated that only the rich and not the poor can get things done in the post-independence India. So this unfortunate situation is exacerbated by the fact that officials at the lower levels of the bureaucracy are either insensitive or demand illegal gratification to provide services which is a fundamental right of every citizen. In spite of admirable reforms, major and tiny brought about the present central government, the common belief is that very few things get done at the bottom of pyramid of the government without greasing somebody's palm. So, as someone put it, in many countries in West, a citizen will have to offer a bribe to persuade a civil servant to omit doing something which he is legally required to. In India, one will have to resort to bribing a public servant to compel him to do something which he is enjoined by the law. So state and the policies, particularly the authority concerned about the situation that prevails in our police stations. There are more than 15,000 of them in the country. A number of them have been no doubt distinguished themselves with their readiness and to serve the not so literate and the poor. So sadly, a majority still have to blemished record of ill-treating a poor. So as a result, the police station have become an institution that is shunned by the law-abiding citizens. This is where the author would like to see a quality improvement in the policing, which has been assured by the IPS recruiters. So whenever they see injustice or violence against unsuspecting citizens, it will be for them to rise in the protest and instill sense in the subordinate ranks as well in the supervisors. There is a real danger of the image of Indian police diminishing further in incoming young officers just mark the time and do not put their foot down when it comes to unethical practices. So here in this article, the author compares with the different sectors, that is Indian police service and Indian administrative services, should come down to the level of citizens who are at the downstage and to interact with them and create a trust in them. That is the end of the article first, and we will focus on next article, that is WHO relevance is fading. It is been reduced to coordinating body beholding the interest of richer members of the state. So COVID-19 has infected more than 19 million people, claimed around 0.7 million lives and devastated economies. As the pandemic transcends geopolitical boundaries, one is forced to ruminate the counterfactual with the serious timely global health interventions is World Health Organization duly supported by the governments. So an early warning and timely policy measures by WHO would have forewarned countries and set their preparatory efforts in motion for mounting adhesive response strategy. So slow response with the regional offices in 6 geographical regions of the country, offices around 150 countries. The WHO is expected to play a dual role and of the think tanks and oversee global response to the public health emergency. It is reported that earliest COVID-19 positive cases in the China was reported in November, but China informed the WHO about the disease only in January. So with the WHO country representative station in Beijing, it is unlikely that widespread transmission went unnoticed. So then, even though the confirmed cases reported in Japan, South Korea, Taiwan, US, and WHO continued to downplay the severity of the virus, it took some inexplicable decisions and actions such as declaring the pandemic of public health emergency of international concern on January 30, ignoring Taiwan's hint of human-to-human transmission and request of sharing relevant information. So WHO severely criticized for poor handling of the Ebola outbreak in 2014 as well. So incontrovertibly, the relevance of the health agencies have been fading. The WHO has been reduced to coordinating the body beholden to the interests of the rich member states. Its functional efficiency have been disadvantaged. The organizational lethargy, absence of decisive leadership, bureaucratic indolence, underfunded programs, and the inability to evolve to meet the need of 21st century. So Director General Tedros have been criticized for this leadership ability during this pandemic. In contrast, Gro Harlem, the former director of WHO, spearheaded the global health response with a host of significantly policy decisions. So she focused on projecting WHO as one of the entities and publicly reproached the Chinese leadership for its response into 2003 SARS pandemic. So the timely containment of SARS despite unfavorable response from China bears the stamp of her decisive leadership. Relying on rich member states, the WHO is funded through accessed contribution made by the member state and voluntary contributions from member states and private donors, while accessed contributions can be spent as per the organization's priority. So WHO Assembly irregular voluntary contributions allocated in consultation with the donors, while the voluntary contributions accounted for nearly 80% in the budget of 2018 to 19. Accessed contributions merely constitute around 17% of total budgetary support. So the challenge is owing to constrained finances encumber autonomy in the decision making by favoring a donor-driven agenda. While the WHO has failed in arresting the pandemic, governments across the globe are equally responsible for the inept handling of ill preparedness. So however, that does not vindicate WHO tardiness in handling the crisis. Many countries, especially Africa and Asia, who rely predominantly on WHO for enforcing policy decisions of the government governing the public health, political leanings of financial compulsions of WHO cannot betray the trust. So the burden of the expectations must weigh heavily on every policy decision taken by the Global Health Agency. For when the WHO fails, many innocent lives have lost. This is regarding WHO as fading its privilege and also decision, how it affects the livelihood. The next article is on the hospital afire, lack of health safety in health care centers, regarding the safety measures. So healthcare centers lack fire safety because government pays lip services to regulations. The shocking death of 19 people in special facilities in COVID-19 management in Vijayawada and Ahmedabad have exposed the deep rot in regulatory process for institutional and commercial building safety. So while 11 died in Andhra Pradesh incident, where the hotel has been taken over by the private hospital to run as a COVID-19 care center, 9 patients perished in the blaze in Gujarat Hospital in intensive care unit, that is ICU. These ghastly incidents, which claimed the lives of those who were getting treatment or recovering from an infection in supposedly secure conditions, lay bare by the lack of preparedness among the states to manage the expanding pandemic and hasty contracting procedures. So in a familiar pattern, civic and fire authority who were expected to monitor the safety of such building have sought to pin responsibility for carnage of the owners of the properties. So they have been held responsible for the failure to obtain no objection certificate or in a case of hotel turned COVID-19 care center, carrying out electrical upgrades for safety. So this is clearly untenable, as the Supreme Court of India observed about a decade ago in the Afire cinema fire tragedy case in Delhi, pulling up authorities including the Union Home Minister for abdicating the responsibility and passing the buck on to the management of the institution. So in Ahmedabad ICU blaze, the patient expected the institution to offer the highest levels of safety, but suffered as it was ill-equipped to fight a fire. So safety regulations of buildings used in healthcare delivery is a subset of overall need to regulate hospitals, and states should use a recent deadly fire and also occasion to launch much delayed reforms. In the absence of safety systems, many died for fire and smoke inhalation, while those who survived had nothing but lack of countdown. So the situation cannot be allowed to continue. The National Building Code of India, with the additional fire safety provisions for hospitals, is a basis for hospital accreditation system, but these should be made mandatory and enforced in all states. If the smoke alarms and sprinkler systems along with the local firefighting aids are available, loss of life can be eliminated. So all patients should be covered by substantial life insurance, and evacuation system for ICU patients need to be a part of building design. Often hospital buildings are regularized of unapproved constructions by the state government acting thoughtlessly. Schemes introduced to regularize building violations are clearly antisocial in character. The many fires in institutional buildings and their terrible toll should lead to the full inspection of all such facilities for the safety, with the civil society keeping up the pressure on the government to act. So this is regarding the fire accident which took place in different parts of India, that is Vijayawada and Ahmedabad, how they should curb the situation and take the proper measures in the further coming, and also the government should act. Civil society keeping the pressure, and also government should take into action. The final article is regarding the mislead priorities on controlling of coronavirus. So aggressive testing and contact tracing alone can contain the virus spread. The extended lockdown might have slowed down the spread of the novel virus in India in the beginning, but in the absence of large-scale testing, tracing and isolation of infected of their contacts, the virus have been spreading with a renewed vitality. So if it took 168 days to reach 1 million cases in July 16th, it took 21 days to double 2 million in August 6th. Death to increased around 25,599 on July 16 and 41,641 in August 6th. So the recent this is regarding the number of daily new cases reported across India have been increasing. Similarly, the number of deaths per the day have also been rising. It also crossed 1,000 mark in August 19. So till mid July, the daily fresh cases reported were around 35,000, but increased to 50,000 since July 29th. So this is regarding the coronavirus cases have been increased further, but the action is not taking the proper preventive measures. That's the end of article discussion. If you are new to my channel, I request you all to subscribe so that you will not miss any further updates. Thank you for your time. Have a great day.